anytime we start having a discussion about implementing the Kansans Can vision, one of the very first questions that comes up is, but what do we have to do to get accredited? So we asked Brad if he would come on this morning, give us the update. Where does the accreditation process stand today? Brad, welcome.
All right. Well, again, it's great seeing everybody in there, room. There's mostly familiar faces, but the nice thing is there's even people in there I don't recognize, which means you brought a lot of people locally along with you that I'm not normally in front of. But first of all, just where we're at with the accreditation model, in April, the state board had a retreat and got to listen to 5 or 6 school districts kind of share their approach to how they've been working over the past 3-4 years around the rubrics, around a pre-K through 12 system, and really allowed the board to kind of see what it looks like out in the field. Last week at the May meeting, it was a receive item. We presented, again, an update with the board about the key components of how the new accreditation model would be different from QPA, and it will be going to the board in June as an action item. Hopefully, this summer, we will be able to officially move away from QPA and into a new model. I'll tell you up front, the main goals of this new model is, number one, to help the board move their vision forward. Number two, it's got to support school districts where they currently are, because every district in the state is at a different phase. Thirdly, the model has to be rigorous enough to challenge everyone's thinking. We heard from some of the districts. I'll just use an example of Bueller. I don't know if they're in the room today, but when Bueller met with the board, they said that they were going through the rubrics, and if you would have asked them a couple months ago or even a year ago how well they do with relationships with their community, they would have told you, oh, that's one of our strengths. But when they really got into the rubrics and really looked at, do we do these types of things, they found out that, you know, that's one goal we may want to set. That there really are some other things that we could probably do. So it's got to be rigorous enough to challenge our thinking a little bit, but yet it's got to be unique enough to meet the various needs of our districts, from size to demographics. And then much like the board's vision, it's got to be flexible. If it is causing us to do things that we don't see help the board and the state reach their vision, then we've got to remove it. So there's got to be enough flexibility in this model that allows us to experiment with some things, but yet it can't be so prescriptive that it gets us off target. So the main components of the model and the recommendation is, number one, we accredit districts or systems as opposed to individual buildings. You know, QPA was one of those, and I hate to use the word siloed, but we've gone as a state and within school districts so far over the past several years to where we're really looking at what do kids need to have to be successful at the next level. And a lot of our districts are moving to a systems approach, so we're trying to align to that, to where we allow district leadership with input from their community, their their leadership teams, their staff, to really build a seamless pre-K through 12 system that links to post-secondary. Another big change from QPA to this is we get away from that annual determination. We all know it takes time. The model's built really around 5 phases. First of all, you do a needs assessment of your district. Many of you have already done that. If you haven't, that would be the first step. Secondly, you set a couple goals. Where are our strengths? And even more importantly, where are some areas we want to improve on? And you look at it, you might find that under responsive culture, under rigor, under relationships. But you select a couple goals, you implement a plan, and then you have a couple years to put that plan in place. And then the last is probably in the 5th year, you reassess where you're at. Honestly, I was on the phone this morning with a superintendent that I'm going to be meeting with their leadership team next Thursday afternoon. That team, visiting with them, most likely will come in to the new accreditation model in the 3rd phase. They've already gone through the rubrics. They've already selected a couple goals, and they have action plans that they're starting to put into phase. So we've got to have this thing flexible enough that meets districts where they currently are. But at the same time, the superintendent I was talking to, from a state perspective, I'm not worried about that district. They've got a veteran superintendent that's been in the chair for over 15 years, a quality staff. We need to have a system that allows them to continue moving forward, but yet it sometimes challenges their thinking a little bit. What concerns me more is that we have over 100 superintendents in Kansas that have been in the chair 2 years or less. We have to be able to provide them some quality guidance on a process that allows them to help the board and help the state meet their vision. Next year, the 16-17 school year, we're calling that a 0 year or a transition year, that we're going to unplug QPA this summer. I think hopefully you all got the message. You don't have to do the QPA building reports. If we need something from that, we know how to find it without you having to go in and submit more. We'll pull it off last year's, but you're not going to have to do that. The advisory council is recommending we replace that with a survey, because we love surveys, but we will send out just one to each district that allows the superintendent or his or her designee to walk through where do we believe we are going into next year. Have we done a needs assessment? And there's no right or wrong answer. It's just to get you thinking about the new model. Next year, everybody will just be looking at where are we, what do we have in place, and focusing by the 17-18 school year, everybody knows by what phase they're going to be entering the new model. So really, I don't want to take too much more time, but I think that the biggest thing that we've been working on this for 3-4 years, but after Randy and I went on that tour, we sat down after working with K-State and really analyzed what did Kansans say they want. And one of the biggest barriers to get to where Kansans said they want to be was at a state level. We have to, from a state level, between an accountability model and an accreditation model, we've got to focus on what Kansans said they want. It will take us time to get there, but we've got to take that step. And the first step is we got to quit basing your accreditation off of a test score. And we've got to start valuing and looking at all of the other, not only academic, but non-academic skills, engaging the communities, building that bridge between K-12 and post-secondary, focusing on early childhood, and hopefully the accreditation model will get us thinking and focusing from a state level so we can support you and what many of you have been trying to do for years. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I know you guys are ready to get to work.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Quickly at your table, talk for just a second about what Brad said about accreditation, and if you have any questions, we'll get them from Brad right away. Brad, the question is, where are the 5 R's going to fit?
Okay, the 4 of the R's are what you're currently doing in order to improve the results. The results was finally set by the state board of where they want to measure whether or not Kansas is being successful, and that's graduation rates, the post-secondary rates, the kindergarten readiness, but we don't want to base accreditation on whether or not you did or did not hit a certain target, because honestly right now, we don't know 4 years from now, based on the board's new vision, what impact we will have on post-secondary numbers, for example. What we do believe is by focusing on individual plans of study, by focusing on school culture and climate, by focusing on developing those social-emotional, that we will have a positive impact on those results. We cannot say, for example, Peabody Burns is at this level, so in 5 years they ought to be here. We're not going to do that, because what we do want to see is, are we having growth in multiple measures as set by the board and those local indicators? But accreditation needs to be based on a meaningful process and not a target. And how your kids do academically, we believe that they will perform better because you're focusing on more meaningful things and not test prepping.
Thank you, Brad. Glenn, did that answer your question? Yeah, I think so. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Brad, thanks a lot. Are you going to stay with us for a little bit?
I'm going to listen to you for about the next 30 minutes, then I'm meeting with CETE here in just a little bit.
Great, Brad. Thank you very much.
Thank you.